Okay, so when we're gonna jump to Beth then for now, and we'll come back for other
Want her to lead
items.
it in? You want her to lead it in? You want me to go and then beat her?
Yeah, we're gonna have her go first. So Beth, we're gonna let you start since people aren't here.
So just as Beth heads up, what Beth is going to be talking about is part of Priority 3 in District 25, which is around mathematics instruction. So she's going to share a little bit about the Amplify Math program that we're implementing across our middle schools this year and schools with middle school grades. So that includes our K-8s. We have a total of 12 schools that are implementing Amplify Mathematics for children in grades 6 through 8. We also have 9 schools that are piloting the program in elementary school with the goal of being prepared for and supporting us in rolling out Amplify in our elementary so that we have a common curriculum across all of our districts. So that's what Beth is going to talk to us about, as well as the latest research on the instructional shifts. She has talked about the instructional shifts last year with you guys. So it's the current space of what the instructional shifts are in relation to growing into Amplify Math. Thank you, Beth.
Good evening, everybody. So happy to be in person and actually see everybody that's here at the meeting. Thanks, Dr. Mike, for the introduction. Again, as he said, just here to talk a little bit about our Amplify Desmos Mathematics curriculum that's being implemented across all of our middle schools and piloted in some of our elementary schools. So during the presentation, I'm going to just revisit the math shifts a little bit, talk ground us in our D25 vision for math. I'll talk a little bit about the curriculum, how it highlights, how it supports student learning, and then what families can also expect at home, and any questions, answer any questions. So did a lot of work around the shifts last year with families. Also had a parent workshop around all the New York City math shifts. These have New York City Public Schools released these about 2 to 3 years ago. And the idea is that we really want to be moving away from more of the traditional style learning where it was that modeling piece, lots of differentiation in the whole group instruction, and back and forth between teacher and student, and always thinking about like what the students don't know, to more opportunities where students can make sense of the math on their own, begin with that productive struggle, engage in tasks that allow them to meet them at the level that they're at, but then also grow to where they are. So those shared low floor, high ceiling tasks. And then the idea that conversations within the classroom would be not just teacher to student, but student to student, and allow for that learning to happen, for students to work in collaboratively in groups, and students really to drive the learning in the classroom. And then when we're thinking about our students' needs, focusing more on what their strengths are and then how we can leverage those throughout to support the areas that they need more support with. And in order to make all of these things happen, the city really believes that having that shared high quality instructional material that allows for these things will support the teachers and the students in being able to make sure that this type of work can live inside the classroom, and then also ensure that equitable experiences for our students. Our vision has been around for a few years now, since I've been in the district, so I'll just give you a minute to read it. I don't like to always read out loud, but so I'll give you a minute to just read it. And then as we go through, just keep this in mind and think about how our curriculum highlights our vision. And so hopefully just even in speaking about the shifts, you can see the alignment of our vision to the New York math shifts, that idea of that inclusive, equitable, and still rigorous learning environment where our kids are engaged in that real world problem solving, those rich mathematical discussions, and that learning is student-centered, inquiry-based, and students are building that procedural fluency from their conceptual understanding. And again, all of this is in service of our students, and the ultimate goal is that we have our students be prepared to meet the demands of college and careers in the 21st century and be able to apply math in the real world. So I'll speak a little bit about our new shared high quality instructional material for mathematics. So Amplify Desmos is a new problem-based digital first math curriculum. It is a hybrid experience. So students do not have to just be all digital, although in our middle schools, they do have more opportunities to engage in that digital-based curriculum. But just know that every lesson also comes with a corresponding workbook lesson. So they can also do workbook lessons. They're not on the computer all the time. In our elementary schools, I want to say about 30% of our 3 to 5 lessons are have the opportunity to be digital. And then in K-2, it's even less. It's about 20% of the lessons, because we believe that in our elementary schools that students do need more of that hands-on exploratory work with the manipulatives. So the curriculum was designed to allow for that in the lower grades. It uses that built-in Desmos technology, which is really known for its interactive math tools and engaging lessons. You'll see a piece of that in a little bit. But many of the lessons are adaptive to whatever the students do. So students can put in their own thinking. They get immediate feedback in regards to whatever they put in. And then also it will adapt to, like, when they put in certain numbers, they'll see how their input responds in relation to what the math is that they're learning. And it's created to help students develop those deep conceptual understanding, reasoning skills, and mathematical confidence, right? So we can see even then how this relates to our vision that we just learned, that we just saw. Some of the key features are it's hands-on and exploratory. It does have those digital tools that encourage that active thinking. There's a focus on student voice, discussion, and reasoning. And so even in our classrooms that we've been going into, we've been seeing a lot of students having rich conversations about the mathematics as they're engaging in it, talking about how, justifying their answers and their thinking to each other. And it's aligned with the college and career readiness standards. So here's an example of a 6th grade lesson on ratios and proportions, initial lesson, just so you can kind of get a sense of what those digital tools look like. In a digital lesson, they get to create their own pizzas. They're beginning to think about ratios and proportions. They can drag the sliders to see how much sauce, to put how much sauce they'd like on their pizza, any other toppings that they would have. And then this moves on to, like, if they put, let's say, 6 ounces of sauce to make 1 pizza, depending on how much sauce they put on, the numbers would change here. So you can see that adaptive feature. So if they like lots of sauce on their pizza, it might say like 10 ounces for 1 pizza. And then it asks, well, how much sauce do you need for 2 pizzas? They can then put in their work, in their response, check their work, and it will give them some automatic feedback, right? So I typed in the answer 18. If I had 6 ounces, how much do I need for 2 pizzas? I put in 18. It will, like, draw it out, and then students will say, like, oh, too much sauce. So they know automatically to kind of go back and think about how they might want to change their answer based upon the feedback that they got, right? Doesn't take away teacher at all. The teacher is walking around during this time, looking and thinking about what students are doing. So that if I'm in the classroom and I see, oh, the student keeps putting in an answer that's too big, I'm going to go over and say, hey, tell me what you're thinking. How are you coming up with your number, right? Let's go back to the slide before. What did you notice? So that's an example of that digital piece. Why did we choose this curriculum? I mean, we felt that it was the best aligned to our District 25 vision for mathematics. Just again, as we've been walking around to classrooms, we've seen the level of engagement of students inside the math classroom increase tremendously. I know I have any students in my middle schools when they're on the computer, especially learning with each other, they've been really, like, excited about it. I've been hearing lots of laughing. They've been talking about the math that's been going on. We also are finding that it's creating that idea of equity across all our classrooms, right? So in many of our schools, they used a maybe a version of a curriculum, but it wasn't always the same across all classrooms, right? So now we can really ensure with this shared curriculum that all of our students are receiving the same experience. They're receiving the supports that they need to be successful in the program, but they're all starting at that same baseline. We've also found that for our English language learners and our students with diverse needs, that the curriculum has been extremely supportive, has lots of scaffolds built in to support them in their learning. In terms of coherence, we can see how concepts build thoughtfully across the grades. On Monday, I had 3 through 5 here, and we were unpacking a unit, and it was really nice to do that work together because the 3rd grade teachers could see how their work with multiplication and the area model was carried through the 4th grade to the 5th grade. 5th grade was working on fractions, and they were using area models, and the 5th grade teachers could see what the work looked like in 3rd grade. So it's been really helpful for our teachers also just to see how the concepts build across the grades. And it is research-based, right? So it's built on best practices in math education and digital learning. I know there's been some debate around the teaching conceptually versus that traditional style of teaching. We're not saying that there isn't a time and a place for that explicit teaching for students in mathematics, right? But when we have our students together for that whole class learning experience, we want to make sure that all of our students have the opportunity to engage in the same grade level math tasks, because we know at the end of the year, they're going to be assessed on that grade level math. So the time for more of that explicit modeling piece of mathematics would live in the small group instruction. So what does a lesson look like? We start always with a warm-up. It's often some type of routine. We'll see a warm-up in a minute. That's going to be a dot talk for 6th grade. Could be things like notice and wonder. There's a 3 read sometimes that comes in. But the routines that we've been pushing for our teachers to be building into the classroom are already built in. And these are going to support the students in being able to access the math from the very start of the lesson. Then it's often followed by 1 to 3 activities. Each activity follows that launch, monitor, connect structure, which is really built on the 5 practices for mathematics instruction that I know Dr. Mike has shared is one of our priorities for our district CEP. So the idea that students are working on the same task, the teacher is walking around, and then the role of the teacher where that explicit instruction comes in is after we've kind of seen what students have done, we share their work and talk about the mathematics that's embedded with it and connect different strategies students have done. How are they the same? How are they different? And how do they connect to those big ideas in mathematics? There's, again, that use of interactive and or hands-on activities. In K-5, we do see the use of centers. There are opportunities for enrichment and and supports for students in the middle schools as well. They just don't call them centers, but they can be easily adapted to station type work. Then there's, within our lesson, it's followed by a show what you know, which is used to be for that formative assessment, where we can get a sense of what students grasped from the lesson for the day. That feedback is designed to be automatic, like instantaneous, so teachers can see automatically, did the student get it right? Did they get it wrong? And then think about what the next steps would be for that student. Provides guidance for if a student is here, here's what the supports are that you should provide for them. And then there's also practice and additional practice, because they've heard from families and from teachers that they needed additional practice problems, although sometimes then we think it's so much, but there's additional practice problems that are also aligned, designed to be more aligned to like state exam type questions, and lots of opportunities for student discussion and collaboration.
So Beth, just go through this kind of modeled space, and then the supporting implementation part, we'll pause just for a moment, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to you.
And then we'll come back.
So come back, wait.
Yeah.
Come back
So
now?
through this part?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if you'd like to join the lesson, you have a computer in front of you, you're more than welcome to just type in the join code there. If you're in our document, you can click on the link, but you could just go to studentamplify.com /join and put in the code. And this will take you to the lesson if you wanted to just experience the tools. If not, I'm just going to quickly walk us through.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Yes. So this is unit 4, which is on dividing fractions, which I know that students struggle with a lot of often, right? A lot of times they've been taught that rule, keep, change, flip, or KFC, or other things, but they don't always understand how or why that works. And so think about how the lesson supports us in better understanding the why that rule works, and then how we can use diagrams to help represent and solve problems by asking how many groups, which is really what we're asking when we're thinking about division. So I'm just going to come out of here and still sharing, right? Okay, so first it would start with this warm up for the day, which is designed for middle school. It's about 5 minutes. Elementary school, it's about 10 minutes. Just so you know, the middle school lessons are designed to be about 45 minutes in length. Elementary schools are designed to be about 60 minutes in length. So a quick warm up. And the warm up here says how many dots are in this image. Let me see if I can make it a little larger. So students would have the opportunity, if they're on the digital platform, they can annotate on here how many dots they see, right? The idea is that, like, you might see, oh, there's groups of 4, and I see 5 groups of 4 here, 5 groups of 4 here, and use that to help me think about how many dots. They can put in their answer, and then, whoops, sorry, did I just hit stop share? Okay. They can put in their answer here, and then for this slide, once they put in their answer, they would actually see the thinking of some other students, right? So they would put in their answer and then explain how they thought about it. As you can see, there's multiple ways that we could think about it. You can think about it just even in terms of groups of 4, how many you see, but really getting students in that mindset of thinking about multiplication, and then eventually how multiplication and division are related. Sorry. Then we move into the activity. In our activity, I'm going to read the task aloud to the students, and then they're going to have an opportunity to work on the next couple of slides. So I'll read it to the students. This one is about making tres leches cake, the popular dessert of Mexico and Central America. It's made with 3 different kinds of milk. In our problem, Alexis needs 6 cups of flour to make tres leches cake, but only has a 2-cup measuring scoop, which, if you like to cook, you know sometimes that's a problem in the kitchen, right? And you have to think about how many scoops should I use. So here, they'll put in their answer. Let's just say they look at the numbers and they're thinking, oh, I just was doing multiplication. I'm going to put in 12. They get some feedback and it's like, oh my goodness, I have too much flour. Let me go back. I might want to revisit the problem and think about, what did I do wrong? How can I see she only needed 6 cups of flour, and I was putting in that she would use 12 scoops, right? So 2 scoops would be way too much. And then I'm going to go back and edit. My teacher at this time can also see what I'm doing, so that if she needs to come over or he needs to come over and provide me with some support, can definitely come over and see what I'm doing and provide me with support that way. Then, again, we're trying to connect that multiplication and division for our students first with whole numbers before we move into fractions. So students would think about, what did I just do? What's an equation that I can use to help me figure it out? There's 2 different problems here that would work. They could either say 6 divided by 2 equals what? Maybe they use that. Or maybe they thought about it in terms of multiplication, 2 times what number? They choose it and then have an opportunity to, again, explain their thinking. Their thinking then is shared with other students in the class. so that other students in the class can also see, is this similar to what I did? How is it different? Or is that thinking, what questions do I have about that thinking? And it helps to guide the conversations in the classroom. Students can be working individually or in groups. We've been pushing a lot for them to kind of be working in partnerships so that they can have those discussions with each other as they're working. Now you see we move on in the first activity still. This is the first activity where they're moving on to working with fractions. So still that same 6 cups of flour, but now they only have that half a cup measuring scoop, right? So they have to think about, well, my size scoop got smaller. What's going to happen? Again, they would put in their response. Let's just even say 1 because it's easier. We will see what happens. They get that same type of feedback here. They can see up, not enough. How can I make it to that 6 cups of flour? And then connecting it back, because our learning goal is around connecting division of fractions to that bar model. So connecting it back to here, they'll watch a video and think about how the video helps with figuring out how many scoops of flour, half-cup scoops of flour are needed for that 6 cups, and then ask to analyze the model and explain it back, right? And while it is asking them to type, students do have the ability to speak into the platform if they'd like to record it there. So that's another way that it's providing supports for students that might need it. Again, for some of our students that need translations, it's available in Spanish, but they can also use that Google Translate feature up in Google Translate to translate in their own language and then have it translated back into English for them. And then we move on to fractions to mix numbers. So taking that same idea of needing a certain cup of flour, we're working with 2 2/3 cups, and now we're using a different amount, that 1/3 cup. How would we do that? Same type of thing where they would put in their response, check it again. Students might want to be thinking about like the bar model. What does that look like? They can draw. They should be able to draw their thinking here. Whoops, this one is not so easy when I'm doing it, but they might want to draw a bar model, put some mathematics in, and show their thinking that way. This is activity 2. At the end of activity 1, my teacher should have had a conversation around the learning that the students had. So they've stopped, they're recording. What do we learn about division? What do we learn about dividing with fractions? How can bar models help us, right? And then they move into the piece where they're thinking about now mixed numbers and dividing by that. So follows a similar type structure. Now they're giving them 2 separate models, asking them to analyze them and think about how each diagram can help us calculate. So they're making connections between the mathematics that they just did, different visual models, which one maybe aligns to them, and how they're similar, how they're different, how they support us in that understanding. And then they're asked to draw their own diagram, right? Again, coming back together, there's card sorts. This is our 3rd activity. This one has 3 activities. It does move at a little bit of a faster pace, but they would then sort to see if they have a division sentence or a multiplication sentence, which ones go together. And so they'd match those there. And then our synthesis. So our teacher comes back, brings them together. Basically, this is like the big learning of the day. What's the big takeaway? What did you learn? How can you use an equation or a diagram to help us determine how many half-cup scoops you need to make 6 cups, right? And then there's the exit ticket out the door, where students get to show, to solve a problem. Teacher gets the information as to what kids did. Again, they can show their thinking on the slide, and that helps me plan for small group instruction or the next day. And a quick little SEL check. So I wanted to share just a little bit about some of the supports our schools are receiving in the rollout and implementation of the curriculum. First off, here's a list of the schools that we have using In our elementary schools that are piloting are PS 21, 29, 32, 79, 107, 130, 164, 169, 193, 219, and 499. We really asked schools that were departmentalized in some of the upper grades to, if they were interested in trying out the curriculum this year, to think about how they can use that with their departmentalized grades. That's why you'll see some are using it in grades 5 only. They're only departmentalized in 5. And then we have some that are departmentalized all the way down to 3rd grade. We do have one school using it K to 5. They had used it last year in 3 through 5. So PS 169 used it last year with 3 through 5, saw tremendous progress in the students, and then decided to use it in K to 2 as well. All of our middle schools, again, are using it in grades 6 through Algebra 1. So just know that if you have a student in middle school, they are using this curriculum. Oops, sorry. Here's some of the supports that schools who are either piloting or part of the New York City Solves for middle school, what they're receiving. They're currently all schools are getting 3 days of unit unpacking. So to really dive into the mathematics of each unit to support teachers in understanding the content and how it connects within a unit and across the grades even. Our elementary schools will get 3 days of professional learning. That's a deep dive into mathematical content and the pedagogy that's embedded within there. So things like, let's explore the math routines. Let's dive deeper and think about how the math connects across the grades. What models are being used throughout the curriculum. We'll also engage in some intervisitations to learn from each other. And then middle schools will receive 4 days of similar type of learning. And in middle schools, they're coming by grade. So each grade is coming together as a cohort to do that type of work. In our elementary schools, we have it 3 through 5. And then each school is receiving coaching. For elementary schools, they'll receive 4 days of in-school coaching from Amplify Desmos. This was a kind of what I'm looking for, like a benefit for us for piloting it, right? They gave us 4 days of free coaching in schools. Middle schools are getting a little bit more coaching because this is part of that New York City Solves initiative. They'll be receiving 8 to 14 days of in-school coaching. And then in middle schools, I'll also be engaging in mandatory fall and spring implementation checks as a part of New York City Middle School, New York City Solves. However, we all will also be visiting elementary schools and doing similar types of checks. How can families support this type of learning at home? Families can log on through student devices, so they can ask students to log on to Clever and then access the Amplify Desmos curriculum online and see the type of work that's happening within the classrooms. Just know elementary schools, there's not as much online learning, so asking them to bring home the workbook is more supportive for students. Homework may or may not be every night from Amplify Desmos. Sometimes I know they have iReady, but there are those practice problems. Really, when you're working together with your child for homework, emphasis on the learning that's happening in class and having those discussions about the mathematics. So when students are coming home, asking them, hey, how did you come up with that answer? What made you think that? How does that connect to what you learned today in school? Some support tips are, again, ask students to show you what they did in Desmos, encourage them to explain their thinking. And then there's also some family resources that I've linked at the end of this presentation. So here are some of the family resources from Amplify Desmos. This caregiver hub is amazing. It has every unit, every lesson within a unit has a summary for families, and then also some practice problems to work on, whether you want to do them yourself or do them with your child. And then there's also an answer key. If you wanted to just learn a little bit more about the rating it received, the curriculum received in Ed Reports, it's linked there. The rationale behind problem-based learning inside the classroom. And then also, like, what do we mean by a social collaborative classroom? Like, what does that discussion-based learning look like? And then some success stories. Finally, just a few other resources that you can support, math learning at home. These are just some links. Bedtime math is one of my favorite ones. If you want to just go in, if there's like a little story that you can talk about, it provides you with questions. The questions are for lower grades all the way up to upper grades. So the questions vary based upon the age of your student, but still the same story. And then also, Figure This is great. This is from NCTM. This provides with families questions, the types of questions you can ask to support with homework help. And if you're looking for some virtual manipulatives, Polypad comes from Amplify. That's an amazing resource as well. Just some updates from me. We do have we have two district math nights this year. We'll have the first one Thursday, January 22nd at PS 129. It was an amazing success last year. I think we had over 200 people in attendance. And then also we'll have one at the middle school. All grades are invited to attend at each of them. Just put some pictures of the activities from last year. You could see all the families were having so much fun engaging in those math games, lots of laughter going on, but also lots of math learning. And then a list of other games if you'd like to play that address mathematics. For me, I will also be conducting 3 family workshops this year that I really want to get at supporting families in understanding the concepts of math. So a lot of times it's like, how do I support with this? I can give you strategies, but maybe you also want some support in understanding the content. So our first session will be around understanding addition, subtraction, how that progresses through the grades. How do we move from just even identifying numbers all the way up to working with variables and equations? Same for multiplication and division. And then everybody's favorite, some learning around fractions, ratios, and proportional reasoning. We'll look at some of the amplified tasks from there as well. And I think that's pretty much the end of what I had. So I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Do any council members have any questions first?
Sure.
Regarding the workshop that you mentioned, do you have flyers or anything to make flyers?
Yeah, so the district will make the flyers and then we'll post them on the website for families. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Mm-hmm.
So this is new curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So compared to older curriculum, what are main differences?
I mean, this one is research-based.
Yeah, so what has happened over the course of time, especially in our middle schools, is they started with a base program that was then included with another base program, that was then included with another base program. And then before you know it, it became a combination of so many different programs that was not common amongst schools, but sometimes not even common amongst some of our teachers in certain cases. So the range of program varied from building to building, which for us here at the district and the context of New York City Solves, what was important for us, much like going and moving forward with New York City Reads, was to make sure that we establish a common curriculum across all of our schools so we can have common conversations around the mathematics. Where are our kids doing really well? Where are our kids struggling? And then we can engage in that discussion around in a common space rather than of so many different angles of approach into the mathematics. So that's one thing. The other thing that you'll notice is the entry point is a little bit different. The entry point is going to bring them through some type of a routine to really build their muscle. You know, some of the questions that were in the chat were around foundational type of mathematical skills. Those are all embedded as part of the work that's going to happen inside of this program. It's just done a little bit differently. It doesn't change the fact that kids still need to know how to add, multiply, subtract, and divide. All of those things are still embedded as part of the program. Just the approach is a little bit different. It's more experiential than where kids will have just follow these steps. And having a 9th and 11th grader that at times struggle in mathematics, one of the reasons why is because they learn very much so through follow this algorithm, follow this step. The problems that we have to solve are often not as simple as just follow steps. When we change the problem just a little bit, if they're not equipped to think through that problem, they wind up getting lost. And the algorithm doesn't necessarily help them because they can't do the thinking to help them come to a solution. So that's a big part of the difference that you'll see in these programs. So one of the links there that you'll also see from Ed Reports was the research that went into Amplify in the selection. For those of you that were not on the council last year, we had council members from the CEC participated in a district-wide math team that engaged in the analysis and review of 3 specific programs. One was iReady Mathematics, Illustrative Mathematics, and Amplify Mathematics. Those are the 3 programs within the New York City Solves I don't know, bundle, I guess. I don't even know what you were kind of referred to that. But part of that whole approach was visiting classrooms, seeing it implemented in classrooms, having the vendors come and present, and having folks give feedback in the process that's teachers and students alike, so that we can make a really informed decision around where we were going to go next as a community. Now, there was a question also in here about, am I worried about implementation of a new program and what its impact can be? Of course, you know, you always certainly worry about that, but I do believe that you know, our teachers are equipped with what the math content is that has to be taught. The content is the content. This is just about organizing the information in ways that gives access to children across our school, from children that might be struggling math learners to children that are those that need a little bit more of that enrichment space, and it helps meet kids where they are with problems that allow them to really enter in different ways. So there was a lot of connection with our parent community, student community, staff, and building leaders to make this choice. But always, anytime there's a new program, much like we did with New York City Reads, you get a little bit nervous about implementation. But we have been seeing progress, and in district, while we didn't necessarily grow by the 6% we did in reading, we did grow a little bit in math with just under 70% performance in math, which says that we're doing okay, but we have a lot more room to grow. And it's for those kids that currently are not meeting the mark that we're really working on and towards. Other questions around devices. So we do have some schools that are a 2-to-1 scenario, but not all. So any issues with those types of things and needing of those types of resources, that's just about connecting with the building leader. If there's an issue there, you can certainly contact us at the district office, and we can certainly support to make sure that you guys have the access that you need. So I just saw a comment. My child is in grade 4, is enjoying Amplify in sharp contrast to another program.
My daughter also.
Also, can we
Awesome.
obtain workbooks? Beth, workbooks for the Amplify?
What about, yes,
Yes.
all grades?
Yeah,
Mhm.
all grades have workbooks that are associated with, you know, and sometimes I think, you know, because we wind up showcasing a lot of the digital platform, which, by the way, there was another question around assessment. Assessment is embedded, and in fact, that's one of the things that I like about the program the most, is that it gives teachers feedback as students are learning, going through the problems. So it's not, let me wait to the end, I see an exit ticket. It's through the implementation that they're seeing how many children were successful or not, what was their thinking in terms of solving this, how do I help child A versus child B get to the end goal that you're hoping for. So we have seen a lot of students provide us with positive feedback thus far. We're also going to continue to grow with that as time goes on, through a partnership that we do have with a research organization to help us gather additional supports for our teachers and students. I think I touched base on most of them. Let me go back to these questions.
I was gonna touch on that because I know my daughter is using it in 4th grade this year, and I know the teacher said we're learning alongside her as she's
Mm.
learning, but we haven't seen any of the books that they're using. So I think that's where that comes into play, because the books have not come home at all from what I've seen.
Yeah, so when I meet with teachers, I'll share some of that feedback also. They should, in the lower grades, they should be able to at least be posting the family resources for each unit, so you can see what each lesson is within the unit. I'll tell you why they most likely don't want to send them home. They're heavy. There's 2 volumes and they're like super thick, the workbooks. And so with all the computers and things like that, like personally, I would not want my child carrying that home. But thinking about then what does that school to home connection for mathematics look like? How can we support the families in understanding what's happening with the students? And then also have a sense as to what our students how they're doing in the mathematics curriculum. They should, I don't want to misspeak because I know there's a little bit of differences between elementary and middle school, but I feel like they should be able to also download workbook pages and post them to a Google Classroom so that you can also see the workbook lessons on the Google Classroom. So I'll make that suggestion to families so that to schools so that families can see what students are doing.
Yeah, and there was also a question in here just about, for schools that aren't necessarily piloting it, we're connecting with all of our teachers in terms of training. We have 2 Elizabeths. One goes by Beth, the other one goes by Liz. They happen to both be our math team. But both of them are working collaboratively to make sure that teachers across our grades are receiving access to training, so that we are hitting the ground running wherever it is that we are within this space. Certainly different from those that are getting a chance to implement it today versus those that might have to wait until next year. The entry point is a little bit different, but our goal for all of our schools moving forward is that we provide them opportunity going into next school year to practice a little bit so that they're ready to go for September, when we hopefully have implementation for all schools going into next school year. And I say hopefully because we do have to see how it gets rolled out through the elementary school level. The reason why it's a pilot is because right now New York City Solves for us is at the middle school level. But we had some schools that were interested in piloting it based on the feedback we got from kids and from staff, which is why they brought it down to some of our elementary school grades.
And the curriculum is really just a tool that can be used to support us in implementing those math shifts that I started with. So even our elementary schools that are not implementing it, they're using things like mathematical instructional routines to support that sense making with their students and to support those discussions. We're also having conversations around what that asset-based support looks like using the curriculum that you have. So all of those things still live within the schools that maybe aren't using Amplify. It's just that sometimes it puts a little bit more work on the teachers to go find some of those things. And so the curriculum does some of that heavy lifting for the teachers, which is nice as well. So.
Is there any other questions?
It was just a couple about the one really mostly about the printout between home and the workbooks and making sure that there's the connection between home and school.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we'll have to make sure that we're reviewing to make it clear across all of our buildings. That's great feedback for that. Thank you so much. And listen, yes, there are digital resources that are present, but it does not mean that's all that the kids are going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
It does not mean that 100% of the work is going to be done on a computer. There are going to be a balance between the both. And just so all of our families know, our students are held accountable to completing an assessment in April, May that is on the computer. They do need to know how to make sure that they can do things with the tech tools in order to be successful on the state exams at the end of the school year. So part of that is also building the muscle of our kids to make sure that they feel really good and confident using the devices when the time comes. So, in terms of devices, our schools are typically in a good place. If you're experiencing otherwise, that was a question in here, you can certainly let us know. We're consistently tapping into our schools to see where they are with resources. So those you can connect with us on at the district level. You can reach out to Jenny from our team. Lewis, if you can put Jenny's contact information in the chat, and we can certainly support.
Thank you, everybody.